Close your eyes. You're about to step through a door that hasn't been opened in 2,000 years. The year is approximately 20 AD. The place? A limestone hillside in Lower Galilee. The village? Nazareth. Population, maybe 400 souls. The house you're entering isn't what you've imagined. It's carved into the rock itself, part cave, part construction. And the family inside? A tecton, a builder, his wife, and a son somewhere in his 20s. What did it smell like in that house? What sounds woke them before dawn? What did the carpenter's son see when he looked down at his own calloused hands? Today, we're walking inside. Before we step back in time, let me show you how we know what we know. In 2006, archaeologist Yardina Alexander excavated a small dwelling beneath the International Marian Center in Nazareth. 2 rooms, a central courtyard, a cistern hewn directly into the bedrock. 1st century, the time of Jesus. But that's not all. Beneath the Sisters of Nazareth convent, archaeologist Ken Dark spent years investigating another structure, a rock-cut courtyard house dating to the early Roman period. 1 room survived to its full height, complete with an original rock-cut doorway and fragments of the original chalk floor. The site was later venerated by Byzantine and Crusader Christians, suggesting a long tradition associating this specific house with the Holy Family. These aren't guesses. These are excavated homes from Jesus' Nazareth. And they look nothing like what most of us have imagined. Forget the wooden cabin from Sunday school illustrations. Forget the freestanding brick house. Nazareth homes were partially carved into the limestone hillside. The soft local bedrock, called nari, allowed builders to cut back into the rock, leaving natural stone walls that were then supplemented with stacked field stones and earth and straw mortar. Nazareth itself was small, maybe 50 houses spread across 4 acres, but it wasn't isolated. The city of Sepphoris, which the historian Josephus called the ornament of Galilee, was just a 1-hour walk away. A major Greco-Roman center. Banks, markets, theaters, construction projects. We'll come back to that. For now, we're going to walk through a single day in this house, from the moment Jesus opened his eyes at dawn to the stars over the rooftop at night. Every detail grounded in archaeology. Every moment bringing you closer to the life he actually lived. Let's begin where every day began, before sunrise, in a room carved from stone. The first thing you notice is the darkness. It's nearly total. The room has windows, but they're narrow slits cut high on the wall, what archaeologists call Egyptian style. They're designed for ventilation and privacy, not light. Just enough gray seeps through to tell you morning is coming. The floor beneath you is packed dirt, or maybe fragments of chalk, compressed and swept smooth. You're lying on a reed mat, thin but serviceable. Your blanket? The same cloak you wore yesterday. the same one you'll wear today. In 1st century Galilee, your outer garment served double duty. The Torah even protected this practice. A creditor couldn't keep a poor man's cloak overnight because he needed it to sleep. There are no beds, not as we understand them. The family sleeps on mats spread across the floor, often in the same room. The space is small. The ceiling is low, timber beams supporting the flat roof above. The walls are a patchwork, natural bedrock where the room was carved into the hillside, field stones stacked with mud mortar where the rock gave way. The air smells of earth and stone and smoke. Last night's olive oil lamp left a residue that clings to everything. These lamps were small. You could hold one in your palm, and they produced more smoke than light. A single flame flickering in a clay dish. That was illumination. At the Sisters of Nazareth site, archaeologists found one room that survived to its full original height. The rock-cut doorway is still visible. Fragments of the chalk floor remain. Stand in that space today, and you're standing where a 1st century family woke up. Now, imagine it 2,000 years ago. A young man stirs on his mat. His cloak is wrapped around him against the morning chill. The room is cool. The limestone walls hold the night's cold. He rises in near darkness and prepares for the day. This is where Luke 2:51 happened. He went down to Nazareth with them and was obedient to them. Not in grand halls, not in places of honor, in a dark room carved from rock, where obedience meant rising before dawn to work. But no one stayed inside for long. As soon as the light was sufficient, life moved to one place, the heart of every Nazareth home. Step through the doorway and everything changes. The courtyard is open to the sky. Finally, light. Finally, air. The interior rooms were for sleeping and storage. This is where life actually happened. The first sound you hear is grinding, the rhythmic scrape of stone against stone. A woman, perhaps Mary, is at the handmill crushing barley into flour. This sound was the alarm clock of the ancient world. It started before sunrise and continued until there was enough flour for the day's bread. Every day, no exceptions. Bread didn't keep, and bread was survival. Look around. The courtyard floor is packed earth or rough stone paving. Against one wall sits a domed clay oven called a tabun. Nearby, pottery jars hold grain, oil, and dried legumes. Reed baskets hang from wooden pegs, keeping food safe from pests. A goat might be tethered in the corner. Chickens scratch in the dust. And in the center, or cut into the bedrock at the edge, is the cistern. This is the most critical infrastructure in the house. A bell-shaped well, hewn at least 3 meters deep into the limestone. It collected winter rain runoff channeled from the flat roof through stone gutters. Before the water entered the main cistern, it passed through a sedimentation basin where silt and debris could settle. The cistern walls were lined with hydraulic plaster, a sophisticated mixture of lime, ash, and crushed pottery to prevent a single drop from seeping into the rock. Water wasn't piped in. There was no faucet. Every drop that family drank, cooked with, or cleaned with came from rain they had captured and stored. The cistern at the International Marian Center site shows exactly this design. When archaeologists excavated it, they found the engineering of people who understood that water meant life. The courtyard was also where women spent most of their waking hours, fetching water from the village well in the early morning, grinding grain, baking bread in the tabun, fueled by dried animal dung or olive pulp, spinning thread, weaving cloth, sometimes up on the roof where the light was better, caring for children, maintaining the ritual purity of the household according to Jewish law. The sounds of the courtyard, grinding, children, animals, conversation drifting from neighboring homes, the smells, baking bread, smoke, olive oil, the sharp tang of dung fuel. This was Mary's world, every day for decades. But the courtyard wasn't where Jesus spent most of his waking hours. What he did for a living and where he did it will change how you picture him forever. For 2,000 years, we've called him the carpenter's son. We picture a wood shop, sawdust on the floor, furniture taking shape, wooden beams and joinery. But that's an English translation problem. The Greek word used in Matthew 13:55 and Mark 6:3 is tekton. And tekton doesn't mean carpenter, it means builder. A craftsman who worked with wood, stone, and sometimes metal. A general contractor in modern terms. Now consider the landscape of Lower Galilee. Timber was scarce. The hills were rocky, not forested. But limestone? Limestone was everywhere. The same soft Nari bedrock that let families carve their homes into hillsides also provided the raw material for construction. Scholars estimate that 9 out of 10 projects for a Galilean tekton involved stone, not wood. Chiseling blocks, squaring corners, stacking walls, building homes, walls, and public structures. Jesus wasn't primarily a woodworker. He was a stonemason and builder. Picture the workspace. Not a tidy shop, but a construction site. Stone blocks in various stages of shaping. Iron chisels and bronze tools laid out on a low Roman-style workbench. Craftsmen in this period often sat while working. Limestone dust hangs in the air, catching the morning light. The sound of iron striking stone echoes off the hills. The tools were precious. Iron was expensive. A tekton's toolkit, adze, chisel, mallet, handsaw, plumb line, bow drill, was often passed from father to son. These weren't just implements. They were family heirlooms. And there was plenty of work. Sepphoris, the ornament of Galilee, sat just 4 miles from Nazareth, about an hour's walk. When Herod Antipas began rebuilding it as his capital around 4 BCE, he launched one of the largest construction projects in the region. A forum, paved streets, public buildings, a theater. Jesus grew up during this construction boom. He and Joseph almost certainly walked to Sepphoris for work. There they would have encountered Roman officials, Greek merchants, laborers from across the Mediterranean. The cosmopolitan world brushed against the village every day. This changes everything about how we read the Gospels. When Jesus said, "Everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock," that wasn't poetry. That was professional vocabulary. He knew exactly what it meant to build on rock versus sand. He had done both. When the Psalms declared, "The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone," Jesus heard that as insider language. The builders, the tectons, his people, his trade. What did Jesus see when he looked at his hands? Calluses, not from splinters, from gripping stone. Cuts from chisels, dust ground into the creases of his palms. The hands of a builder. Take a moment to picture it. Stone dust, calloused hands. The Son of God, building homes for ordinary families. The same hands that would be nailed to a cross first learned to shape stone and wood for other people's houses. By midday, the sun was high. The heavy work paused, and the family gathered for what mattered most in every Jewish home. There is no table. There are no chairs. A reed mat is spread on the courtyard floor. The family gathers around a single clay dish set in the center. Lentil stew, seasoned with salt, onion, and garlic. Beside it, flatbread torn into pieces. A clay cup of wine mixed with water. Maybe some olives. Dried figs for sweetness. This is a meal in 1st century Nazareth. The foundation of every meal was what historians call the Mediterranean triad: bread, wine, and olive oil. But bread dominated everything. Scholars estimate that 50 to 70% of an ordinary person's daily calories came from bread alone. In Hebrew and Aramaic, the phrase "to eat bread" was synonymous with "to have a meal." Most Galilean bread was made from barley, dense, slightly bitter, the grain of the poor. Wheat bread was a luxury for special occasions. The bread was baked fresh every morning in the courtyard taboon because it didn't keep. Beyond bread, the diet was simple. Legumes like lentils and chickpeas appeared in stews and dips. Vegetables included cabbage, leeks, and wild greens. Fruits, figs, dates, grapes, were often dried for year-round preservation. Dairy came from goats and sheep. Milk, cheese, butter, available mostly in spring and summer. Fish from the Sea of Galilee was common, especially on the Sabbath. But meat? Meat was rare. Goat, mutton, or chicken appeared on the table only for festivals and sacrificial celebrations. The rest of the year, protein came from legumes and occasional fish. Bone analysis from the region confirms what the archaeology suggests. Inhabitants consumed a low-protein, plant-heavy diet. Meals happened twice a day. A light midday meal, a larger communal meal in the evening. But before anyone ate, something essential happened. The head of the household spoke a blessing. And Jesus knew these words by heart. He had heard them every day of his life. He had spoken them himself countless times. The blessing over bread. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth. After the meal, a longer prayer, the Birkat Hamazon, the grace after meals, gave thanks for the food and the land. Every meal was a small act of worship. Every blessing was a reminder. The bread comes from God. When Jesus taught his disciples to pray, "Give us this day our daily bread," he wasn't being poetic. He was being literal. Bread was survival. Bread was the meal. And bread came from God. And when, at the Last Supper, Jesus took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and gave it to his disciples, he was doing something he had done thousands of times before. The Last Supper wasn't a new ritual. It was the transformation of a lifelong practice. Every meal of his life had prepared him for that moment. We've seen what Jesus ate, but there's one more place we haven't gone. The place where he slept, prayed, and watched the stars. As the sun begins to set, the family doesn't retreat to those dark interior rooms. They go up. The roof of a Nazareth house was flat, and it was a living space. Construction was straightforward but effective. Timber beams, usually sycamore or cypress, were laid across the walls about 2 meters apart. Overlapping mats of natural cane rested on the beams. On top of the cane, workers spread a thick layer of earth plaster, 10 to 15 centimeters, mixed with ash and lime. Then they compacted it with a heavy stone roller until the surface was hard and smooth. The result, according to one scholar, felt more like a road than the top of a house. A low parapet wall ran around the edge, required by Torah law in Deuteronomy 22:8 to prevent falls. People spent significant time on their roofs. The danger was real, and the uses were many. Drying food, figs, grapes, grain spread in the sun. Working, spinning thread, weaving cloth, taking advantage of the light that the interior rooms lacked. Sleeping. During the hot summer months, the roof was the coolest place to rest. And praying. When you needed solitude, you went up. The interior rooms were cramped, dark, and shared. The roof offered sky, breeze, silence, a place to be alone with God. As evening falls, imagine the scene. The sky shifts from blue to purple to black. Stars appear one by one, then by thousands. No light pollution, no electricity, just the ancient heavens in their full glory. The glow of oil lamps flickers in neighboring courtyards below. On the distant horizon, the lights of Sepphoris. Crickets sing. Voices carry on the still air. Perhaps from another rooftop, you hear the words of the Shema being recited. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. This was the central prayer of Judaism, commanded in Deuteronomy 6. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. When you lie down, when you get up, every evening, every morning, for a lifetime. Jesus prayed these words on this rooftop, under these stars. In Acts 10, we read that Peter went up on the roof to pray. This wasn't unusual. This was normal. The roof was where you met God. Picture it. The day is done. The village is quiet. And on a rooftop in Nazareth, the Son of God looks up at the heavens his own hands made and prays. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And then, once a week, everything stopped. All the rhythms paused. Time itself became holy. Friday. The sun touches the western hills, and the world changes. Oil lamps are lit, more than usual, marking the sacred time. The family gathers in the courtyard. Best clothes, clean mats, a meal better than any other night of the week. Perhaps fish from the Sea of Galilee, vegetables prepared with extra care. The Sabbath has arrived. From this moment until Saturday at sunset, all work ceases completely. No grinding, no building, no carrying, no commerce. The tools are set aside. The taboon goes cold. The village grows quiet. The next morning, the community gathers. In larger towns, they met in formal synagogue buildings. In small villages like 1st century Nazareth, before such structures were built, gatherings likely happened in the largest available room, perhaps a home, perhaps an open space. The Torah is read aloud in Hebrew, then explained in Aramaic so everyone understands. Prayers are recited. The Shema is spoken in unison. Community matters are discussed. This is more than a religious service. It's the heartbeat of the village. Luke 4:16 tells us, "He went to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, and on the Sabbath day he went into the synagogue, as was his custom." As was his custom. This wasn't new when Jesus' ministry began. He had done this every Sabbath of his life. The Torah readings weren't unfamiliar. The prayers weren't strange. The synagogue was home. There's one more detail the archaeology reveals. Excavations in Nazareth homes have uncovered limestone vessels, cups, bowls, storage jars made of chalk stone rather than clay. Why limestone? Under Jewish law, stone could not become ritually unclean. If a pottery vessel touched something impure, it had to be destroyed. But stone was immune. It could be washed and reused without concern. The presence of these limestone vessels tells us something important. The families of Nazareth weren't just poor. They were devout. They went out of their way and likely paid more to maintain ritual purity in their homes. This was intentional religious practice. This was a community that took the Torah seriously. In a house carved from stone, a family kept the laws written in stone, and God Himself sat at their table. Now, step back. Look at everything we've seen. The dark room at dawn, the reed mat on the packed dirt floor, the cloak for a blanket, the courtyard coming to life, the grinding of grain, the splash of water from the cistern, the construction site, stone dust in the air, the ring of iron on rock, calloused hands shaping blocks for someone else's home, the shared meal, the torn bread, the blessing spoken. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth. The rooftop under the stars, the Shema on his lips. Hear, O Israel. The Sabbath rest, the synagogue gathering, the limestone vessels carefully chosen. All of it. One life, one place, one man. This is where God chose to live. Not a palace, not a temple. A house carved into a hillside, in a village most people had never heard of. He woke up on a dirt floor. He drank rainwater from a cistern his family had carved by hand. He shaped stone until his hands bled. He prayed the same prayers every Jewish child prayed. He was one of them. He was one of us. This is the incarnation. Not an idea, not a doctrine, a life. When Jesus said, "I am the bread of life," He had spent decades breaking bread in a house where bread was survival. When He said, "I am the living water," He had drawn water from a cistern, watched the rains fill it, known what thirst meant. When He said, "I am the light of the world," He had grown up in rooms so dark that a single oil lamp was precious. The parables weren't poetry. They were memory. The seeds and the soil. The stone the builders rejected. The lamp on a stand. The house built on rock. He wasn't reaching for illustrations. He was reaching for home. The Word became flesh, John wrote, and made His dwelling among us. Made His dwelling. Pitched His tent. Moved into the neighborhood. Into a house carved from stone. Into a life of bread and labor and prayer and rest. He made himself nothing, Paul wrote, taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. Human likeness. This likeness. This life. This house. The next time you read the Gospels, remember this house. Remember the limestone walls, the olive oil smoke curling toward the ceiling, the flat roof under the stars, the calluses on his hands. Jesus didn't hover above human life. He entered it completely. The dust, the work, the prayer,